Hi everyone, welcome to Poetology. We're going to talk about Swiss poetry today because I'm in Switzerland right now and I'd like to share some of the books I have here that can help you get started with Swiss poetry. The first one is going to be in English, but the others are in French because that's my native language. If you don't speak French, you can still completely watch the video, it's fine. You may just not have access to some of the books that I mentioned. I will also post a lot of links to things you can check out. One of the resources is also in English. And this video also contains a reading of some Swiss poetry in the woods on a day when there was a lot of snow. So I hope you enjoy that very authentic performance. The first one is titled Modern and Contemporary Swiss Poetry. It's edited by Lucius Keller. And one thing that is really special about this book is that it contains poets in all of the 4 national languages, which are German, French, Italian, and Rheto-Romansh. And in some of those languages, especially German and Italian, there are also dialects, several different dialects that can make it very difficult for people to access all of the literature that is available. So in my case, for example, I didn't know many of the poets who are included in this anthology until they were translated into English for my benefit. In a way, it's a weirdly global book, right? Or at least an international book, where the fact that it was published in English, which is a foreign language, made my own literature available to me. So I find that quite interesting. It may not be the case for a lot of other countries where there is only one national language, and it may not be something you think about. A lot of the Swiss French poets mentioned here are also in the second anthology that I'm going to show you. So this book has 4 parts, one for each language. As I said, some of the poets write in dialects. I'm going to show you this one, which is by Kurt Marti, because it's written in the Bernese dialect, which is the type of Swiss German that is spoken closest to where my parents live. And this poem is entitled Wie geht's, which means how are you? And yeah, it's quite funny. What I enjoy in this book is that you get the original version on one page and then the translation mirrored on the other page. And as you can see, the translations are fairly literal, so that the translation looks like the original poem and can be read alongside with it. So even if you're not fluent in one of those languages, you can still kind of play with the words and lines and have a look at the different versions. The second book is an anthology of Swiss French poetry titled La Poésie en Suisse Romande. It contains 4 sections for each of 4 generations of poets. So it's kind of a historical look at Swiss French poetry from the beginning of the 20th century until now. It contains a lot of the usual Swiss French names you would see, but you're probably not familiar with them, so I'm not going to cite all of them. But for example, Blaise Cendrars, Charles Ferdinand Ramus, Corinne Aby, Maurice Chapard, Philippe Jacotet, Nicolas Bouvier, and also Joseph Tapi, who is one of the co-editors along with Marion Grave. And I wanted to include this anthology of literature from the Jura because that's the region I'm from. And this one came out in the early 2000s and it puts together a lot of important regional authors, both in poetry and prose, from 1965 to 2000. I would say almost half of these are poets. It was a really important work when it came out, and I don't think it's been done since. So we probably need an anthology of literature from the Jura for the last 20 or so years now. I hope this is coming soon. The title is Anthologie de la Littérature Jurassienne, and it was edited by André Wyss. One thing that is interesting with Switzerland is how small the country is, but how many writers it has sustained over the years, and how many literary visitors it's attracted as well. It's in some ways quite a literary country, but you wouldn't be able to tell unless you scratch the surface a little bit. The other day it started snowing and I went out into the woods to read a poem for you. I decided to read a winter-themed poem so that everything would fit perfectly, and that poem is called Winter by Cléa Chopard. So it's taken from this volume of poetry. Here it says that Cléa Chopard was born in 1971 in Lausanne and studied literature. She teaches at the Swiss Literature Institute in Bienne. She is author of poetry and short fiction, and she has won the Ramu Poetry Prize for Saison du Corps. And she has 2 more poetry collections. I will read the poem in both French and then English. It was translated by John Taylor.
Cléa Chopard, hiver. Cet hiver, plaqué à la rive des arbres, ces matins où le soleil n'éclaire plus, tout ce qui se précipitera contre le mur des lèvres, les gravats, le bois des grandes portes, on devra le retenir à l'aveugle, mais quelque part, au bas des jardins cousus de saules, on nous aura laissé, ballottés par le vent, notre mince poumon d'herbe. Cléa Chopard, winter. This winter, plastered against the banks of trees, these mornings when the sun doesn't shine anymore, everything that will smash into the wall of lips, the rubble, the wood of great doors, one should blindly hold on to it all. But somewhere, at the bottom of gardens sown with willows, will have been left behind for us, beaten by the wind, our thin lung of grass.
So I hope this was nice. I really had a great time filming it in the woods. A few thoughts that I've had while thinking about this question of Swiss literature is the question of diversity, because there are a lot of white poets in the poetry that I've just described, and many of them are also men. So I think there's not a lot of diversity in Swiss poetry so far. And I was thinking also about queer representation, which is still a little kind of lacking. And I wanted to show a few things. One is that I think the younger generation of poets is not really represented by these anthologies, and I realized that I don't have a lot of their work. But there's this little review called L'Ours Blanc, which focuses on one poet or author more generally for each issue. And the ones I have are number 15 and number 16. And one is Cléa Chopard, Ancolie, commune, with a botanical theme. And the other one is Rinne, l'usage du mot, which is more of a linguistic exploration. And both of these, I would say, are more representative of a newer generation of poets that is more experimental, including, in Switzerland. And also, I wanted to maybe show off my little collection of this review called Hétérographe, which focuses on queer literature. There is original work and there is also quite a bit of translation. It stopped running a few years ago. It also has more visual work. But it was quite an extraordinary thing while it was running and contains more contemporary poets occasionally. I will be posting a lot of links below this video in case you want to look into Swiss poetry. I will also post a link to a video anthology of Swiss French poetry where you can see contemporary poets reading their work. I also wanted to mention a really cool project taking place in the UK called Literally Swiss, where Swiss authors are invited in London for events and presenting their work, and I will post that under the video as well. That's a great way to discover Swiss poetry if English is your main language. I've mentioned the lack of representation in these anthologies for more diverse voices and queer voices especially. But one question that I still have is, personally, because I am a Swiss poet writing in English, I don't know where to find other people like me. I mean, I can't be the only Swiss person writing in English. There's the Geneva Writers Club producing work in English from Switzerland. So I know there must be other Swiss people living abroad who also write in English. But that is not represented in any of the anthologies that I've just mentioned or any of the other links that I'm posting with this video. So if you're a Swiss person writing in English, please get in touch. I'd love to know who else is in the same situation, and maybe one day we'll organize something. In future videos, I'd also like to talk to more poets who are writing in English as a second language and discuss this a bit more and what it's like to write in a language that is not your mother tongue, and to maybe live across countries and not in just one place. Stay tuned for this, it's coming. And in the meanwhile, thank you for watching this video, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye.